Here we go.
Okay. Well, we have a good morning, everyone.
Good
We have
morning.
a lot of people who are scheduled who are signed up, so they might be joining us. But welcome everyone who is here. This is a workshop on parliamentary procedure, and we're calling it a workshop because there's going to be a short introduction, and then there'll be some participation by the audience. But first, I'd like to introduce you to our organizers. I'm the chairman. My name is Cheryl Hammond, and the other organizers are Toastmaster Tom Kasha, who's our District 8 parliamentarian. Tom, please wave. And Shannon Dunphy. Shannon. And Angie, are you here?
She is.
No, Angie, please wave. Okay, well, so thank you. There is a saying that when all is said and done, a lot more is said than done. However, for business meetings, we have a solution to that problem, and it's called parliamentary procedure. With parliamentary procedure, you maximize what gets done without wasting anybody's time. And also you give everybody a chance to have their say. Tonight, we're going to be using that form of parliamentary procedure called Robert's Rules of Order. And I'm sure you've seen this in many places, maybe in your city council meeting, your school board meeting, District 8. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a meeting of our special business district, and they were using Robert's Rules of Order. They were making motions, they were seconding it, they were doing all of that. So it's worth learning whether you want to just participate or whether maybe you'd like to be the chair of a meeting that uses Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules starts with the idea of the motion, which is how you propose that something get done or that some decision be made. So we're going to be talking about 5 different kinds of motions today, although there are other motions that are not covered in our discussion, but you can find in the attachment that was sent out to you that has a complete list of all motions. So you have you have several attachments, but you have 2 attachments with motions, one with the 5 motions that we're going to be talking about and one with all the motions. One thing about parliamentary procedure is that when you want to speak, you have to be recognized by the chair, except for making a second. Now I'd like to share with you a screen to go over the 5 motions. All right. So let's start with the main motion. The main motion is when you want to propose something and you introduce it by saying, I move to. For example, suppose you're a school and somebody wants to put a bicycle rack in front of the school. You might say, I move to install a bicycle rack in front of the school. And it requires a second. So every time anybody makes a motion, you have to have at least somebody who wants to go along with this. So someone has to say, I second the motion. And then you have time for debate or discussion, and then it will pass with a majority vote. Moving to the second type of motion, that's the motion to amend. If you want to amend, suppose you're pretty happy with the motion, but it really needs a tweak. For example, on the bicycle motion, you want to install the bike rack, but if it's too expensive, you don't want to. So you might say, I move to amend the motion to install the bicycle rack if it costs less than, insert the words if it costs less than $200. This also requires a second, and then you have debate, and then a majority vote. Now, if the amendment passes, then that amendment is added to the main motion. If it fails, then you just go back to discussing the main motion. Another point is that when you make a motion to amend, that amendment should be relevant to the main motion. For example, you don't want to say, I move to amend the motion to also have a Halloween party, because that has nothing to do with the main motion. And the chair will rule that you are out of order. So the chair always rules. Moving to the third of the 5, this is the previous question motion. Now, a lot of you probably are not familiar with this motion. And this is basically a motion to stop debate. And to make this motion, you say, I move the previous question. It does require a second. However, there's no discussion. And you immediately take a vote, and it takes 2/3 of the voters, 2/3 of the vote to pass. If the move for previous question passes, then all debate ends at that point, and you vote on the motion that's on the table. If it fails, you just go back to debating the motion. This is a good thing to have, because sometimes when there's a motion on the table, everybody wants to have their say, but people just start saying the same thing over and over. Everybody speaks up and they're just repeating themselves. So someone might make the motion, I move to previous question. Now moving to the 4th of the 5. This is the motion to postpone to a definite time. Suppose you just think this motion would be better discussed later. So you can move to postpone it to a definite time, either in the same meeting or at the next scheduled meeting. These are the only 2 allowed times. For instance,
Hey, Cheryl,
yes.
we had a question in the chat really quick.
Okay.
Justine asked, is it always a 2/3 vote? Is it a quorum at times?
2/3 votes of the quorum. Anytime we're talking about voting, it's the voting of the quorum. And we didn't really discuss the quorum here, but to have a meeting, you have to have a quorum, which would be defined in your constitution. Maybe it's 20% of the members or whatever it is. See if I can, thank you. Oh, also I will have a period for questions. Okay. So postponing to a definite time. Suppose you're having an all-day meeting and everybody's getting hungry. You might postpone it till after lunch. Or in the case of the bicycles, you might want to postpone it till the next meeting when your treasurer has more time to find out how much the bike rack cost. But you wouldn't postpone it till you would never say, well, I will postpone it until the cost of bicycle racks goes down. It has to be a definite time, and either the next meeting or during the same meeting, but later. All right, let's move to the final one we're discussing right now. And as I said, these are not the only motions. You want the motion to postpone indefinitely. So we had definite time and indefinitely. So indefinitely means at no particular time, and basically that kills the motion for that meeting. So suppose you really don't want to take a vote right now. You would prefer not to tell people how you want to vote. So you might just, I move to postpone indefinitely. And it requires a second. And then you can discuss. Now the discussion can be about the motion or about postponing anything. In the previous one, postponed to a definite time, you can only discuss the postponement, not the motion itself. But this one you can discuss anything, and it takes a majority vote. If it passes, then the motion is off the table for that meeting, off the table. So all discussion stops about that motion. However, anybody can bring it up again at a future meeting. So it's only killed for that meeting. And that concludes all of them. I'm going to stop the share.